I faked my love, Daniel. My ex is coming back for me. By Christmas, you'll be out of my life. I'm going back to the man I should have married. You're nothing but a mistake. Every kiss, every vow, I faked it all. By the time Patrick returns, I'll have taken everything from you. Those were the cruel words Clara spat at her poor husband, laughing as if she had already won. But what she never realized was that Daniel's silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. And when his plan finally unfolded, Clara would lose not only her pride, but everything she thought she owned. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about love, greed, loyalty, and revenge. Viewers, if your partner ever confessed that they faked their love for you, would you forgive quietly, or fight back with everything in you? Clara stands in their cramped living room, arms crossed, her eyes cold. Daniel, greasy from a long day at the mechanic shop, sets down his toolbox, expecting dinner, or at least a smile. Instead, she delivers the dagger. I faked my love. My ex is coming back for me. The words hit harder than any punch. His son David, just 8, peeks from the hallway, catching every syllable. Daniel's fist tightens, but he doesn't speak. His silence is a storm waiting to break. Clara smirks, mistaking his silence for weakness. Micro cliffhanger, Daniel walks out, but whispers to himself, if she wants a storm, she'll have it. The smell of engine grease clung to Daniel's hands as he pushed open the wooden door of their cramped two-room apartment. The evening sun leaked through the torn curtains, casting a dim orange light across the cracked tiles. He set down his toolbox carefully. He never liked making noise when his son was asleep. But tonight, little David wasn't asleep. Daniel's heart softened when he saw his son crouched in the hallway, playing with a toy car made from bottle caps. Daddy! David ran into his arms, giggling. Daniel hoisted him up, his weary face breaking into a smile. Where's your mama? He asked gently, kissing his boy's forehead. David hesitated, pointing toward the living room. She's not happy. Daniel frowned, walking in. Clara stood near the window, arms folded, her gold earrings glinting in the fading light. She wasn't dressed like a wife waiting for her husband. She wore a fitted red gown, heels, and makeup too heavy for an ordinary evening at home. Her eyes were cold, her lips pressed thin. You're back, she said flatly. No warmth. No welcome. Daniel forced a smile, wiping his hands on a rag. Yes. Long day at the garage. But thank God, I fixed 2 engines today. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Clara cut him off, her voice sharp. Daniel, I'm done living for tomorrow. His chest tightened. He set David down carefully and told him, go to your room, son. The boy lingered, sensing something heavy in the air, but obeyed slowly. Daniel turned back to his wife. What are you saying? Clara's laugh was bitter, echoing through the room. I'm saying I never loved you. Do you hear me? I faked it. All of it. The smiles. The vows. Even the nights I held you. It was all an act. The words sliced through him. His throat went dry, but he managed a whisper. Clara. Her chin lifted, her voice rising with cruel confidence. Patrick is back. My real man. He can give me the life I deserve. Not this poverty, this, grease-stained excuse for a marriage. She gestured at his overalls as if they disgusted her. Daniel's eyes darkened, but his voice stayed calm. Patrick? Yes, she spat, eyes gleaming. He's coming for me. And when he does, I'm leaving you. Don't you dare stand in my way. At that moment, the bedroom door cracked open slightly. David's small eyes peeked out, his innocent face crumpling as he overheard every word. He clutched the toy car tightly, as though it could protect him from his mother's venom. Daniel noticed his son but didn't call him out. Instead, he inhaled slowly, steadying his breath. He wanted to shout, to break something, to demand why. But he didn't. He simply reached for his toolbox again, wiping his hands clean as if preparing for work. Clara scoffed. "Look at you. Silent as always. Do you have nothing to say?" Daniel looked at her finally, his eyes calm yet burning. His voice was low, controlled, almost chilling. "You've spoken. Now watch." And with that, he walked out the door, leaving Clara frowning in confusion, while David, still watching from the shadows, held back tears. Clara smirks, thinking his silence means defeat. But Daniel's last whispered words, "Now watch," hang in the air like thunder waiting to strike. Sunday morning bells echoed through the dusty Lagos street. Families in pressed clothes and polished shoes made their way to church, greeting neighbors with warm smiles. Daniel walked silently beside his son, holding his small hand. His eyes were bloodshot from a sleepless night, but his posture was steady, unbroken. Clara walked ahead of them, strutting as if she belonged to another world entirely. Her bright yellow lace gown shimmered, her heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown to disaster. She didn't once glance back at the man and boy trailing behind her. Inside the church, Pastor Elijah raised his voice in prayer, his booming baritone filling the hall. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Daniel bowed his head. Clara scrolled on her phone. After service, the congregation gathered outside under the mango tree, chatting in small groups. Daniel was pulling David close when Clara suddenly turned on him in front of a crowd of church members, her voice loud enough to carry. "Look at you, Daniel. Do you think I want to keep living like this? With a man who can barely feed his family. My friends' husbands are building houses in Lekki while mine is still fixing tires in a roadside garage." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some faces looked away awkwardly, others leaned in, eager for gossip. Daniel clenched his jaw, but remained silent. Clara wasn't done. She laughed harshly, pointing at his oil-stained shirt. "I married a failure. Do you know what that makes me? A bigger fool." A few women gasped. David tugged on his father's arm, whispering, "Daddy, let's go." But Daniel stood still. His silence was both shield and sword. Unknown to Clara, standing a few feet away was Cunnel, Daniel's childhood friend, his battered phone hidden in his palm. Cunnel's loyalty had always been unshakable. As he watched Clara spit venom in public, he pressed record. Her every insult, the word failure, the mocking laughter, was captured. Pastor Elijah stepped forward, his brows knit in disapproval. "Sister Clara," he said firmly, "the tongue is a double-edged sword. Be careful, for words spoken in pride can become curses." Clara rolled her eyes, scoffing, "Pastor, don't preach to me. I'm tired of covering this man's shame." She turned sharply, storming off toward a waiting car, her heels cracking against the gravel. The congregation murmured louder now. Some pitied Daniel. Others whispered, "Patrick must be back." Cunnel slipped closer, lowering his voice. "Brother, you don't deserve this." Daniel exhaled slowly, his eyes following Clara's retreating figure. "Record everything, Cunnel. One day, the world will see." Cunnel nodded firmly. As the car door slammed behind Clara and sped away, Pastor Elijah placed a heavy hand on Daniel's shoulder. "My son," he said gravely, "what is buried in darkness will always rise in daylight. Do not fight with your hands. Fight with wisdom." Daniel's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Wisdom, Pastor. That's exactly what I intend to use." Clara, inside the car, adjusts her mirror and smiles slyly while typing a text. "He bought me a diamond bracelet. See you tonight." The message is addressed to Patrick. The afternoon sun baked the asphalt until it shimmered like glass. The sound of an engine purred into the compound, smoother than anything that ever rolled out of Daniel's small mechanic shop. It was a black Lexus, polished until it looked like liquid night. The car door opened with a click, and out stepped Patrick Williams, the man Clara once loved before Daniel. Patrick was tall, dark-skinned, dressed in a crisp white agbada that screamed wealth. Gold chain glistened against his chest. His cologne wafted across the compound before he even took 3 steps. Clara, who had been sitting on the balcony with her phone, sprang up like a woman reborn. Her smile stretched wider than David had seen in years. She nearly tripped on her heels rushing down the stairs. "Patrick," she cried, her voice breaking with false sweetness. She threw herself into his arms. The neighbors gasped. A few even muttered under their breath, shaking their heads. But Clara didn't care. Patrick smirked, holding her possessively. "I told you I'd be back. Didn't I?" "You kept your word," Clara said, her eyes glittering like a woman starved for wealth. She ignored the window where David's small face pressed against the glass, watching. Patrick reached into his pocket and handed Clara a small velvet box. She opened it with trembling fingers. A diamond bracelet sparkled inside. Clara gasped, loud enough for half the street to hear. "Patrick, it's beautiful." Daniel appeared at the doorway, silent. His overalls still smelled of engine oil, his face weary but calm. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He just stood there, eyes narrowing slightly as he took in the scene. Clara turned to him, clutching Patrick's arm like a prize. "Daniel, this is Patrick. My real man. He's everything you're not. And he's back for me." The words sliced sharper than a blade. David, still at the window, whispered to himself, "Mama, why?" His toy car fell from his hand, clattering to the floor. Patrick smirked at Daniel. "You've done your part, mechanic. Thanks for keeping her busy all these years. But the game's over now." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. He simply looked at Clara, then at Patrick, and finally up at his son watching from above. Clara noticed the silence and mistook it for defeat. "Don't just stand there, Daniel. Pack your things. You and your poverty are no longer my cross to carry." The compound had gone quiet. Even the children playing football had stopped, their ball lying abandoned as they stared. At that moment, Patrick slipped Clara a folded bank document. She glanced at it quickly before sliding it into her purse. But what she didn't notice was a pair of eyes watching from behind the rusted gate. Ibrahim, the homeless boy Daniel often gave leftover food to, leaned forward, memorizing every detail. He didn't know what the paper was, but he knew it was important. Patrick kissed Clara's cheek, bold and careless. Neighbors gasped again. Clara smiled shamelessly. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low and calm, almost too calm. "You've chosen, Clara. I hear you." And with that, he turned back into the house. His silence was louder than any fight. Ibrahim runs off down the street, clutching the image of that folded paper in his mind, unaware that what he saw will one day destroy Clara and Patrick's plans. The garage smelled of burnt rubber and motor oil. A single bulb hung from a frayed wire, swinging gently with the night breeze. Daniel worked under the hood of an old Peugeot, sweat dripping from his forehead despite the cool air. The metallic clink of his spanner echoed through the empty workshop, each sound sharp, controlled, like the rhythm of a man refusing to break. Connell leaned against the wall, chewing on a toothpick. He had followed Daniel after church, still shaken by Clara's public insults. "Brother, how long will you keep enduring this?" Connell asked, his voice heavy with concern. Daniel wiped his brow with a rag, never looking up. "As long as it takes." Connell frowned. "She's mocking you in front of the whole community. Everyone's whispering. Your silence is killing you." Daniel finally looked at him, his eyes steady, voice chilling in its calmness. "No. My silence is sharpening me. The storm is loading, Connell. And when it comes, it won't just be thunder. It will be fire. The bulb flickered as if agreeing. Across town, in Clara's world, betrayal blossomed under a different light. She sat outside the compound on a plastic chair, phone pressed to her ear, voice soft and eager. "Patrick, you don't know what it means to have you back," she whispered, twirling the diamond bracelet on her wrist. "Daniel is nothing. He'll never fight back. I'm already yours." Her laugh was sweet, syrupy, dripping with false devotion. "Yes. I'll have the land papers ready. With that money, we'll start fresh. He'll never know what hit him." But Clara wasn't as alone as she thought. A few meters away, crouched by her fruit stand, Amina Bello was packing up the last of her unsold mangoes into a basket. A poor widow with 2 children, she had once been saved by Daniel when her cart toppled on the road and no one stopped to help. He had given her extra naira that day and told her, "Feed your children before you feed the world." That memory burned in her chest as she overheard Clara's words. She froze, her heart pounding. Land papers? With Patrick? Clara's laughter rang out again, careless. Amina's grip tightened on the basket handle. Her eyes narrowed. So this is the kind of woman he suffers for. Back at the garage, Daniel tightened the last bolt, wiped his hands, and closed the hood. The car purred to life as if nothing had ever been broken. He watched the engine hum with quiet satisfaction, then muttered under his breath. "Everything broken can be fixed, except trust." Connell stepped closer, studying his friend's unreadable face. "So what will you do?" Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile. "You'll see." Amina, still in the shadows, whispers to herself as she watches Clara end the call, "Not everything hidden stays hidden, Clara. One day, your words will burn you." The next morning, the city buzzed with the clamor of Danfo buses and street hawkers shouting over one another. Daniel walked past them unnoticed, dressed in a clean white shirt and worn black trousers. His toolbox was absent. Today wasn't about fixing engines. Today was about fixing his life. He stopped before a modest office building tucked between 2 shops. A small brass plaque read, "B.Z. Johnson and Company. Legal Chambers." Inside, the office smelled of old books and polished wood. Papers were neatly stacked, and sunlight filtered through lace curtains. Behind the desk sat Mrs. B.Z. Johnson, a woman in her late 50s, regal in her Ankara wrapper, spectacles perched on her nose. She looked up from a case file, recognition lighting her face. "Daniel Okoro. The quiet mechanic who once repaired my generator for free. What brings you here, my son?" Daniel sat carefully, his hands clasped. "Mama BZ, my home is on fire. And my wife is holding the matches." Her eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "Speak." Daniel explained everything, Clara's cold confession, Patrick's return, the public insults, the land papers. BZ listened in silence, occasionally jotting notes. When he finished, she leaned back, fingers steepled. "Clara thinks you are powerless," she said. "But the law does not sleep. What assets do you have in your name?" Daniel hesitated, then pulled a folded document from his bag. "These. 40% shares in Metroline Transport Company. My late father invested before he died. I've kept it quiet, even Clara doesn't know." BZ's eyes widened. 40%. That's not small, Daniel. That's power. He nodded. "But if she finds out too soon, she'll twist it against me. I need her to believe I am still the poor, helpless man she mocks." BZ tapped her pen thoughtfully. "Then let her play her game. Let her sign what she thinks are victories. Meanwhile, we will prepare the net. When the time comes, she will fall into her own trap." Daniel's eyes gleamed for the first time in days. "What must I do?" "Nothing," BZ said firmly. "Keep silent. Keep enduring. But give me every document you can find, land receipts, bank statements, anything. I will lock it down legally before she and her lover touch it. Outside, the city roared with noise, but inside the small office, Daniel felt a strange calm. It was no longer just his battle, he had the law on his side. As he stood to leave, Beezy placed a hand on his arm. Son, patience is not weakness. Sometimes silence is the loudest thunder. When it breaks, everyone will hear. Daniel bowed his head slightly. Thank you, Mama Beezy. I'll wait. And I'll watch. Across town, Clara met Patrick at a lounge, sliding him an envelope. Inside, copies of Daniel's land papers. She whispered, soon, it'll all be ours. Neither noticed a shadow in the corner, Amina, pretending to buy bread, watching every move. The hall was alive with music and chatter. Bright balloons bobbed under the ceiling, children ran between tables, and the smell of fried rice and jollof filled the air. It was Clara's friend Sandra's birthday party, one of those gatherings where everyone measured their worth by the cars they drove and the clothes they wore. Daniel stood quietly near the back, his shirt clean but simple, while Clara moved among the crowd like royalty. Her gown shimmered under the lights, the diamond bracelet from Patrick catching every eye. She laughed louder than anyone, her voice carrying across the room. Clara, you look radiant. Sandra gushed, kissing her cheek. Clara tilted her head dramatically. Ah, my dear, when you have the right man in your life, it shows. She deliberately glanced toward Patrick, who was standing smugly near the drinks table. Guests chuckled knowingly. Daniel felt the sting but said nothing. His son David clung to his leg, wide-eyed at the spectacle. It didn't take long before Clara made her move. She clinked her glass loudly, commanding the room's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, do you know what it's like to live with a man who fixes tires for a living? A man who comes home smelling of grease while others smell of success. The crowd erupted in laughter. Daniel's heart sank, but he held his son close, shielding his ears. Clara wasn't done. She pointed directly at him, her voice dripping with scorn. That is my reality. I married a mechanic when I could have married a king. But don't worry, those days are over. My true man has returned. All eyes shifted to Patrick, who raised his glass proudly. Clara walked over and looped her arm through his. Gasps and whispers swept through the party. David's small voice trembled. Daddy, why is Mama saying that? Daniel knelt, smoothing his son's hair. Because sometimes people forget who they are. But the truth always comes back, my boy. In the corner, Connell's phone was recording everything. His hands shook with anger, but his focus was sharp. Every insult, every laugh, every cruel word, captured. He whispered to himself, this will be her undoing. Sandra, ever the fake friend, fanned the flames. Clara, you deserve better. Daniel should step aside. Some men are just stepping stones. The room laughed again. But Daniel smiled, calm, unsettling. He whispered to Connell as he walked past, let them laugh. Thunder doesn't announce itself before it strikes. As Patrick kissed Clara's hand under the flashing lights, a group of well-dressed men at another table whispered urgently, passing a paper between them. They were his creditors, watching and waiting. Patrick's time was running out. The night was heavy with music, laughter, and the clink of champagne glasses. Patrick's mansion glittered with fairy lights that lined the driveway. Luxury cars crowded the compound, symbols of wealth and power he flaunted like trophies. Clara stood beside him, radiant in a new silk gown he had bought her that morning. She clung to his arm, her smile wide, her pride overflowing. This, she whispered to Sandra, is what real love feels like. Not grease and poverty. Sandra nodded eagerly, sipping her drink, pretending not to envy Clara's glow. Inside, the party raged on. Patrick strutted from guest to guest, boasting of new contracts and future business deals. He laughed loudly, his gold watch catching the chandelier's light. Clara looked at him with adoration, convinced she had finally escaped Daniel's shame. But at the far corner of the hall, 3 men in sharp suits sat quietly, eyes fixed on Patrick. They weren't smiling. They weren't drinking. They were waiting. As the music softened and Patrick raised his glass to make a toast, the men stood and moved forward. The room fell into a hush. Patrick Williams, the tallest of them, barked. His voice cut through the crowd. "You owe our syndicate 50 million Nigerian nairas. And tonight, you will answer for it." Gasps erupted. Clara froze, her glass slipping from her hand and shattering against the marble floor. Patrick's smile faltered. He raised his hands casually, as if brushing off a fly. "Gentlemen, this isn't the time or place. Let's talk tomorrow." "Tomorrow," another man interrupted, pulling a folded ledger from his pocket. "You said that 6 months ago. The time is now." Clara grabbed Patrick's arm in panic. "What are they talking about?" "Patrick, tell them it's not true." But Patrick's face hardened, sweat beading on his forehead. "Clara, stay out of this." The creditors moved closer, their tone icy. "If you don't pay, Patrick, the cars, the house, everything goes. And don't think we won't drag your name through the courts." The crowd murmured louder, scandal spreading like wildfire. Guests pulled out their phones, recording. The Golden King was crumbling before their eyes. Clara's knees wobbled. Her glittering world was cracking. She looked around desperately, but Patrick shoved her aside, facing the men with false bravado. "You'll get your money. Just give me time." One creditor sneered. "Time is the one thing you don't have." At the doorway, half hidden in the shadows, Daniel stood watching. His face was calm, unreadable, but his eyes burned with quiet satisfaction. Connell stood beside him, phone still recording. Daniel whispered, almost to himself, "The storm has started." Clara, trembling, tried to grab Patrick's hand again, but he yanked it away. "Don't touch me," he snapped. For the first time, Clara realized, she had traded loyalty for quicksand. The high court was packed. Ceiling fans spun lazily overhead, doing little to cut the heat. Journalists lingered by the door, ready to pounce on scandal. The whispers of curious neighbors filled the gallery. Is it true Clara left him? They said she was with Patrick. At the front, Judge Margaret Osei sat tall in her black robe, her sharp eyes scanning the courtroom. She was a woman known for fairness but feared for her piercing words. Daniel sat at one side, his white shirt pressed, his tie simple but neat. His lawyer, Mrs. Beezy Johnson, shuffled through her notes with calm precision. Beside Daniel, young David clutched his father's hand tightly. Across the aisle, Clara sat in a shimmering gown, trying to maintain dignity. Patrick leaned back in his seat arrogantly, his gold watch gleaming. His lawyer whispered strategy, but Patrick wasn't listening. He thought money would buy the day. The judge cleared her throat. Case number 2874, Okoro vs. Okoro. Allegations of infidelity, mismanagement of family property, and custody of the minor child, David Okoro. The courtroom buzzed. Clara smirked, whispering to Patrick, "This will be over quickly." Beezy rose, her voice strong, "My lord, we will demonstrate that Mrs. Clara Okoro abandoned her marriage, conspired with Mr. Patrick Williams to steal my client's land and savings, and is unfit for custody." Clara jumped up. "Lies." Judge Osei banged her gavel. "Sit down, Mrs. Okoro. You will speak when called." Clara sat, red-faced. Beezy continued, "We have recordings, eyewitnesses, and financial documents." She nodded at Connell, who rose and handed a USB stick to the court clerk. Within seconds, Clara's voice filled the courtroom speakers, "I married a failure. My real man has returned. Daniel is nothing." Gasps filled the room. Clara's eyes widened in horror. That was taken out of context, she stammered. But Beezy wasn't done. And here is evidence of Mr. Williams' outstanding 50 million Nigerian nairas debt. She laid out creditor letters and bank statements. Patrick shifted uncomfortably for the first time. Judge Osei leaned forward, eyes sharp. Mr. Williams, is this true? Patrick's lawyer stammered, my lord, those debts. Answer the question, the judge snapped. Patrick's voice dropped, his arrogance cracking. Yes, my lord. But it is under negotiation. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Clara's painted smile faded into panic. Daniel sat still, silent, his hand resting gently on his son's shoulder. He had said nothing, yet every revelation screamed louder than Clara's insults ever had. Judge Osei raised her gavel, her voice firm. This court will now hear testimonies from witnesses. And based on what I've heard so far, Mrs. Clara Okoro, you may want to prepare yourself. The courtroom was tense. Judge Osei's gavel echoed as she said, call the first witness. The clerk announced, Amina Bello. Gasps rose from the gallery. Clara rolled her eyes. A fruit seller? Really? This is his witness, she sneered. But Amina walked forward with quiet dignity. Her wrapper was faded, her sandals worn, but her eyes blazed with truth. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to speak honestly. Beezy rose, her tone sharp but respectful. Mrs. Bello, tell the court what you know. Amina cleared her throat, steadying her voice. On the night of July 14th, I was packing mangoes near the Okoro's compound when I heard Mrs. Clara speaking on the phone. She said, Patrick, I'll have the land papers ready. Daniel will never know what hit him. The courtroom erupted. Clara shot to her feet. Lies. She's just a poor woman Daniel paid. Judge Osei banged her gavel. Silence, Mrs. Okoro. You will respect this court. Amina didn't flinch. She looked directly at Clara. I owe Daniel nothing but gratitude. He once gave me food when my children were starving. I speak today because truth matters more than pride. Daniel's eyes softened, his lips tightening as if holding back emotion. Beezy nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Bello. No further questions. The judge gestured. Call the next witness. The clerk's voice rang out, Ibrahim Musa. Heads turned as the skinny homeless boy shuffled forward, clutching his tattered shirt. His bare feet slapped against the tiled floor. He looked frightened, but Daniel smiled at him gently, nodding encouragement. The clerk whispered, Raise your hand, boy. Ibrahim raised a trembling hand, swore, and stepped up to the witness stand. Beezy crouched slightly to meet his eye level. Ibrahim, can you tell the court what you saw? Ibrahim swallowed hard. I was near the gate when Mr. Patrick gave Madame Clara a paper. She put it in her purse. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was important. Beezy showed him a copy of the land papers. Was it this? The boy nodded firmly. Yes, Ma. Patrick shot up from his chair. This is nonsense. You expect us to believe a street rat? But before he could continue, Judge Osei's eyes flashed. Mr. Williams, sit down or be held in contempt. Patrick sank back, fuming. The crowd buzzed louder now. Neighbors who had once mocked Daniel leaned forward, murmuring, So it's true, she betrayed him for land. Beezy straightened, her voice ringing. My lord, we have here the testimony of a widow and a homeless boy. Two people who have no reason to lie. Yet their words confirm Clara's betrayal and Patrick's conspiracy. Daniel sat tall, silent but resolute, as if the truth itself was fighting on his behalf. Clara's face twisted with rage as she hissed at Patrick under her breath, You promised me no one would find out. Patrick didn't answer, he was staring at the floor, beaten. The courtroom was so still you could hear the ceiling fan creak. Judge Margaret Osei removed her glasses, folded them carefully, and looked down at Clara and Patrick as if she could see straight through their skin. This court, she began slowly, has listened to testimonies, reviewed documents, and weighed evidence. Her voice carried the weight of thunder. Clara shifted in her seat, wringing her hands. Patrick's forehead gleamed with sweat. Daniel sat motionless, David's small hand wrapped tightly in his. Judge Osei's tone sharpened. Mrs. Clara Okoro, you stood in this very court and denied your betrayal. Yet recordings, testimonies, and documents prove otherwise. You conspired with Mr. Patrick Williams to defraud your husband, abandoning your vows and your child in pursuit of greed. Clara leapt to her feet, tears streaking her makeup. Please, your lordship, I was confused. Silence, the judge thundered, gavel striking. This is not a theater for excuses. Clara collapsed back into her chair, trembling. Turning to Patrick, Judge Osei's voice was ice. And you, Mr. Williams. You swaggered into this courtroom as if wealth could shield you. But the evidence of your debts is clear. You are not a savior, you are a sinking ship dragging others down with you. Patrick clenched his jaw, staring at the floor. The judge adjusted her robe. Therefore, the ruling of this court is as follows: custody of the minor child, David Okoro, is hereby awarded solely to Mr. Daniel Okoro. Mrs. Clara Okoro, having proven herself unfit through repeated acts of betrayal, is denied financial claims to her husband's assets. Gasps filled the hall. David's eyes lit up as he squeezed his father's hand tighter. Judge Osei wasn't finished. Furthermore, this court recognizes the integrity of Mr. Daniel Okoro, who remained patient in the face of humiliation, allowing truth to speak for him. Let this be a lesson to all: marriage is not a ladder for greed, but a covenant of loyalty. The gavel came down with a final strike. Case closed. The room erupted. Some clapped quietly, others shook their heads at Clara's downfall. Reporters scribbled furiously. Clara collapsed onto the bench, sobbing, her mascara running like ink. Daniel, please, don't take David from me. I was wrong. Daniel stood, calm as ever, his voice steady. You didn't just betray me, Clara. You betrayed him. He gestured to their son. David walked forward, his small voice trembling but clear. Mama, you said Daddy is nothing. But to me, he is everything. I choose him. Clara's sobs grew louder, echoing through the courtroom like a funeral dirge. Daniel placed a protective arm around his son, guiding him toward the exit. As he passed Patrick, Daniel paused just long enough to whisper, "Kings don't roar. They wait, and then they strike." Patrick flinched, unable to respond. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of neighbors waited, cameras flashing, voices chanting. For the first time, they looked at Daniel not with pity, but with respect. Clara stumbled out behind him, facing jeers and whispers. She lost everything for greed. The courthouse steps were buzzing with people. Vendors called out, reporters thrust microphones forward, neighbors craned their necks to catch a glimpse. But Daniel kept his head down, holding David's hand, walking past them with quiet dignity. Amina Bello pushed through the crowd, clutching her basket of mangoes. Her wrapper was faded, her face lined with hardship, but her eyes glowed with pride. She bowed slightly. Mr. Daniel. I spoke only what I saw. Forgive me if my words caused you more pain. Daniel placed his hand gently on her shoulder. No, Amina. You gave truth a voice when others stayed silent. That is not pain, that is power. From behind, a small voice called out, Olga Daniel. Ibrahim, the homeless boy, squeezed through the legs of reporters. His shirt was torn, his feet bare, but his smile was bright. He clutched the toy car David had once dropped, holding it out like treasure. I kept it safe for him. David's face lit up. My car. He hugged Ibrahim tightly, as if they had always been brothers. Reporters snapped photos. One of them murmured, "Even the poor rise when the truth is on their side." Daniel knelt so his eyes were level with Ibrahim's. "From today, you're not just a boy on the street. You're family." Ibrahim's lip trembled, tears brimming. Later that week, Daniel put action to his words. He walked with Amina to the marketplace, his lawyer by his side. He signed a document transferring funds into her account. With trembling hands, she received it. "Sir, this is too much. I can't repay." Daniel smiled. "You already did. You gave your testimony when no one else dared." Amina's stall doubled in size within days. Where once her mangoes sat on a single basket, now wooden crates overflowed with oranges, bananas, and pineapples. Customers flocked, and for the first time, she had hope for her children's schooling. For Ibrahim, Daniel arranged school enrollment. The boy stood in front of a chalkboard, his torn shirt replaced with a clean uniform, clutching a new notebook. Other children whispered curiously, he was no longer the barefoot street boy, he was a student with a future. Kunal, ever loyal, stood beside Daniel as these blessings unfolded. "Brother, you didn't just win in court. You're rebuilding lives." Daniel's gaze was steady, his voice quiet but firm. "What good is victory if it only feeds my pride? Real victory feeds others." Meanwhile, from the shadows, Clara watched with hollow eyes. Once adorned in silk gowns and diamonds, she now wore a plain wrapper. Her purse was empty, her phone silent. She had traded loyalty for quicksand, and now she stood on the outside, watching Daniel raise up those she once mocked. As Daniel walked hand in hand with his son through the market, a group of neighbors who had once laughed at him whispered among themselves, "We called him a failure. But today, he looks more like a king than any of us." The night was quiet in the small apartment Daniel once called a prison. Now, it felt lighter. The torn curtains still swayed in the breeze, but laughter filled the room, David's laughter. He sat cross-legged on the floor, pushing his bottle-cap car, while Daniel sat on the couch, finally able to smile without forcing it. On the table sat a simple meal, rice and stew, shared without bitterness. Pastor Elijah had stopped by earlier, praying over them. His words still lingered, "Greed blinds, but loyalty builds." "Daniel, you have planted loyalty, and today you are reaping justice." Daniel leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. For years, he had carried shame, silence, and sacrifice. Now, he carried something different, peace. Across town, Clara's world was unrecognizable. She sat alone in a dingy motel room, the peeling paint on the walls mocking her once gilded pride. The diamond bracelet she had flaunted now lay in her palm, worthless without the man who gave it. Patrick had vanished, his debts dragging him underground. The calls she made went unanswered. Her friends, who once cheered her on, ignored her messages. She stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Her mascara was gone, her gown crumpled in a corner. For the first time, she whispered to herself, "I lost everything, for nothing." Tears slid down her cheeks, not from regret for losing wealth, but from realizing she had thrown away the only person who truly loved her. Meanwhile, Amina's fruit stall bustled with customers. Crates overflowed, her children smiling as they helped. Ibrahim sat in a classroom, clutching a pencil like it was gold. His handwriting was shaky, but his eyes glowed with determination. Each underdog Daniel lifted stood as living proof that his victory wasn't just for himself, it was for all who once had no voice. At the mechanic garage, Kunal teased, "Olga Daniel, people now call you the Silent Lion." Daniel chuckled softly. "Lions don't need to roar. They just need to stand." David tugged his father's hand. "Daddy, will Mama ever come back?" Daniel paused, looking into his son's innocent eyes. His voice was gentle. "Sometimes, people choose roads that lead away from home. But what matters is, we still have each other. David hugged him tightly, whispering, "You're the best daddy." Daniel closed his eyes, holding his son close. The weight of betrayal had turned into the strength of justice. Clara, alone in her motel room, clutching the bracelet, whispers, "Daniel," as the light bulb above her flickers out. Across town, Daniel and David bow their heads over a meal, whispering, "Thank you, Lord." Greed builds castles on sand, but loyalty lays foundations on rock. Fake love may glitter, but true love, tested by fire, never fails. If the person you trusted most told you they faked their love, would you forgive, or would you let justice speak for you?